As I'm sure most of you are aware, Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point has been closed since August of 2021 after a woman standing in line for the ride was struck in the head by something called a flag plate, which fell from the green train. I do not know the victim's current standings, but I wish all the best for her, her family, and her loved ones. After sitting closed for all of 2022, Cedar Point announced in September that Top Thrill Dragster as we knew it was being retired, and the attraction would be reimagined in some way. Track from the ride's launch, brake run, and storage areas was then removed while the 420-foot tall top hat remained untouched. In my last video on Dragster, released on November 4th, 2022, I discussed how I had heard from a trustworthy source that the attraction was being reimagined by none other than Zamperla, an Italian amusement ride manufacturer. This came as a major surprise to most viewers, and I believe a lot of you wrote this off almost immediately. But I'd just like to say that I only made that video after I had heard enough evidence to convince me it could potentially be true. I had been hearing for almost 2 months prior that Dragster's original manufacturer, Intamin, wasn't involved on the project and that Zamperla was apparently the selected manufacturer. Intamin has even removed almost all mention of Top Thrill Dragster from their website. Then as far as Zamperla went, I personally did not believe Zamperla was the new manufacturer until November 4th, 2022, when it was announced that Zamperla would be retrofitting an existing Intamin hydraulic launching roller coaster with an LSM launch and new trains and relocating this modified roller coaster to PNE Playland in Vancouver. Top Thrill Dragster is also an Intamin hydraulic launching roller coaster, and it suddenly made sense why I had been hearing that Zamperla would be Dragster's new manufacturer. Then almost 2 weeks later, on November 15th, 2022, Zamperla officially unveiled their new Lightning train, which the company is describing as, quote, the best roller coaster train in the world. The new trains feature an aluminum milled chassis, which helps the Lightning train weigh less than similar trains in the industry. The new chassis also features no welds, making the trains easier to maintain, which will save on maintenance costs substantially. And the trains are capable of being launched by linear synchronous motors, or LSMs, a technology that has proven to be far more reliable than the hydraulic launch used on Top Thrill Dragster, although LSMs produce significantly less powerful acceleration. Adam Sandy, Zamperla's roller coaster sales and marketing director, even said this about the new train.
We can go from 0 to 45 kilometers per hour or 0 to 200. It's all up to our clients.
It's all up to our clients.
And will soon be seen on some of the world's fastest attractions.
The world's fastest attractions.
When paired with LSM launch technology, Sandy states the train can be launched from 0 to 45 kilometers per hour or 28 miles per hour, all the way up to 0 to 200 kilometers per hour or 124 miles per hour, and that the launch speed is all up to their clients. And just the way he says it's all up to our clients, I think he is hinting at something.
It's all up to our clients.
Especially since this is above the advertised top speed of Dragster, which is 120 miles per hour or 193 kilometers per hour.
And will soon be seen on some of the world's fastest attractions.
This now makes Zamperla a competitor with Intamin, the original manufacturer of Dragster, since Intamin has already been advertising that their LSM launching roller coasters can hit speeds in excess of 200 kilometers per hour. But now Zamperla advertises that they can reach a similar launch speed, and they may be doing so with a lighter train. Intamin was the manufacturer who I originally believed would be reimagining Dragster, since the company has already built an LSM launching roller coaster that is nearly as tall and fast as Dragster. Going back to PNE Playland's new launching roller coaster, PNE Playland and Zamperla themselves have confirmed that the unnamed roller coaster will utilize Zamperla's new Lightning train and an LSM launch. And as I mentioned earlier, the roller coaster itself is a repurposed Intamin hydraulic launching roller coaster, which is the exact same ride model as Top Thrill Dragster. The coaster originally opened as Senza Fiato in 2009 at the Park Miragica in Italy. After Miragica shut down in 2018, Zamperla purchased Senza Fiato and are now reimagining the ride with their new Lightning train and a more reliable LSM launch. Now granted, PNE Playland's new launch coaster is a much smaller ride than Dragster with a max height of only 59 feet or 18 meters, compared to Dragster's height of 420 feet or 128 meters. But either way, it means that Zamperla has some sort of program in place to repurpose existing Intamin hydraulic launching roller coasters. coasters. And with Zamperla advertising that they can do launch speeds in excess of Dragster's advertised top speed with their new product, it all adds up. Plus, Cedar Fair, the parent company of Cedar Point, has been purchasing a large number of rides from Zamperla. The new Wild Mouse coaster at Cedar Point opening this year is none other than the Zamperla. And the new flat rides opening at Carowinds in 2023 are Zamperla rides as well. Now this leads us to the question, will Top Thrill Dragster be reopening in 2023? Well, with the same confidence in my last video that I told you Top Thrill Dragster would be reimagined by Zamperla, I'm hearing from the same source that Dragster will not be reopening in 2023 and will reopen in 2024. 2024 is the same year the new launching roller coaster at PNE Playland will also be opening, which Zamperla has claimed will be their first LSM launching roller coaster. Now this may seem like a shock since all of Top Thrill Dragster's launch track, station track, storage track, and track from the brake run have all seemingly been shipped overseas to Italy, where Zamperla's main headquarters and fabrication shop are located. And since Top Thrill Dragster was primarily constructed during the off-season between the 2002 and 2003 seasons, I've heard many assume that modified track should be able to return to Cedar Point and be erected back on the coaster in time for a 2023 opening. But according to my source, this is sadly not true, and 2024 is apparently when Top Thrill Dragster will reopen. Now this is something I would love to be wrong about, and I'll report any changes or updates to this if I hear any. But I think it also makes sense since Cedar Point has already announced their 2023 editions, which in themselves are already large undertakings. And from a financial standpoint, it's probably not the smartest to cram so many large editions into one season, and spreading out large editions across multiple seasons makes more sense. The new boardwalk area, along with the new Grand Pavilion restaurant and Wild Mouse coaster, should be perfect for families. And families are often more critical to attract to a theme park compared to thrill seekers, as they usually spend more money within a park compared to someone like myself. And Cedar Point themselves have been teasing something about 2024 in their recent Christmas video, with the folder saying confidential and the code CP2024 PMPNR, which I believe has everything to do with Top Thrill Dragster. I've also been hearing that a good amount of coaster enthusiasts believe Cedar Point could fully unveil all the details regarding the revamped Top Thrill Dragster on January 9th, 2023. This would be 20 years after the ride was originally announced, which was on January 9th, 2003.
Introducing Top Thrill Dragster.
Now, if the ride were reopening in 2023, I think that would be a great day for the announcement. But since the ride is apparently opening in 2024, an announcement this early doesn't align with how the park has typically made announcements. The park normally announces its next year of editions in August of the year prior. Take Steel Vengeance for instance. The park could have announced that right away in September of 2016 when they announced that Mean Streak was closing. Or even announce Steel Vengeance in January of 2017, which would be the equivalent of announcing the revamped Dragster this January. But the park didn't officially unveil Steel Vengeance until August of 2017, and I'd expect the park to fully unveil the revamped Top Thrill Dragster in August of this year, unless of course I'm wrong about the 2024 reopening. I'll keep trying to secure more details on when the revamped Top Thrill Dragster will reopen, but in the meantime, you should all secure your identities with our video sponsor, Aura, an easy-to-use app that includes everything you need to stay safe online. Aura helped me discover that several of my passwords have been leaked in a data breach thanks to its ability to scan the dark web for your emails, passwords, and social security number. This helps protect you from scammers and hackers, as well as criminals who sell your stolen information. Aura can also help reduce the number of robocalls you receive by requesting the removal of your info from websites that make your personal information public. It can even give you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries, like if someone was opening a loan or credit card in your name. Their VPN even allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. And it protects your devices from viruses, malware, spyware, and more so, the bad guys can't break in. Aura even helps you manage what your kids can do on their devices. You can restrict specific apps, set screen time limits, and even set focus times to ensure your child is doing their homework instead of binging YouTube learning about block zones. And Aura's password manager lets you store and access your online passwords securely and conveniently. You might already already have an app that does one of these things, but with Aura, you don't have to download and pay for 7 separate apps. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks. Go to aura.com/AltoraOrion to start your free trial. Also linked below in the description, or scan the QR code. Now that your identities are safe, let's discuss some other news I've heard. Thanks to these new aerial photos, you can see that all the queue railings from the infield of the ride have been removed. From what I'm hearing, the attraction's new entrance will be located where the ride's original exit was, and I'd assume this former exit area, as well as the nearby surroundings, will house the ride's new queue in a configuration that could look like this, where a large number of switchbacks fill the original exit area, followed by a path that snakes through Iron Dragon's ride area, probably with more switchbacks that eventually lead to the ride's load station. Now, to make this happen, trees would of course have to be removed between Iron Dragon and Dragster. Operationally, there are some big changes coming. The current rumor is that the ride will run with 4 12-passenger trains, which will be Zamperla's new Lightning trains. Right off the bat, that sounds like a downgrade from the 5 18-passenger trains that Dragster used to run at a time. And overall, it's a large departure from the ride's originally intended operations with 6 16-passenger trains. But the shorter 3-car trains are probably due to the weaker LSM launch that might not have the same kick to accelerate a heavier 5-car train up and over the top hat. I'll dive into how 4-train operations could work later in the video, but this could mean a large drop in capacity. Another operational change I'm hearing about is the removal of the separate unload station. Previously, Top Thrill Dragster would load 2 trains in its load station while 2 trains unloaded in a separate unload station. Going forward, I hear that Dragster will now load and unload 2 trains simultaneously in one station, just like Maverick does. In the new aerial photos, you can see that the concrete platform of the unload station has mostly been demolished, which aligns with this rumor, and over at the load station, the roof structure has remained untouched, but a portion of the platform pictured here is in the process of being demolished, while the rest of the platform remains. With the unload station demolished, loading and unloading of trains will most certainly occur at what was the original load station. Now, this is my own personal speculation, but I could see 2 things occurring with the load station. Either trains will be loaded 2 at a time in a straight line, and the platform is in the process of being shortened for something I'll explain later, or the entire load platform may be destroyed and rebuilt to accommodate a dual-sided station similar to King Nakat's Six Flags Great Adventure, where 2 trains are unloaded and loaded on one side of the platform, while 2 trains from the opposing station are out on the course. Now, the dual-sided station is more of a stretch, so let's stay focused on the idea of a more straight-line loading platform where 2 trains are unloaded and loaded in the ride's only load station, while the other 2 trains are out on the course. Doing so would only require 4 ride attendants on the platform who would take care of loading and unloading trains, compared to the prior combination of 4 ride attendants on the load platform and 3 ride attendants at the unload station. This would help Cedar Point greatly with their staffing issues and would also make the ride cheaper to operate. Going back to ride modifications, the load station previously accommodated 2 trains of 5 cars in length each for a total of 10 cars, and will now only need to house 2 trains of 3 cars in length for a total of 6 cars. So the load platform technically doesn't need to be as long as it currently is and could be shortened. But I don't think the load platform would be demolished at all unless a modification was required to account for a physical change in the ride. Because even if this more forward part of the platform won't be used for loading and unloading trains, why waste the money to demolish this platform unless it needed to be removed to accommodate something else? Which is why I believe that a dual station could be happening, or more likely that this demolished area will become home to the ride's new transfer track that connects the main track to the ride's storage tracks, where trains are stored when not in use. The transfer track used to exist here, just outside the main station structure, and would connect to the ride's storage tracks, which were previously located here. But all of the concrete footings for the storage tracks have been completely removed, which makes me believe the transfer track and storage tracks will be moved elsewhere. If this location in the station building were to become the new transfer track, it could also act as the new holding block for the second train dispatched in each pair. Just like in the past, the first train dispatched in a pair would head straight into the launch, and the second train would wait here, just like how the old transfer track used to act as a hold position for the second train. And with this potential change, that that opens up additional space for the launch track, since the launch could technically begin right outside the station building, instead of starting after the original transfer track like previously. This could be helpful since it appears the span of straight track between the original launch and Top Hat is remaining as is, since this track wasn't removed and shipped to Italy like the ride's other track segments. In a previous video, I discussed how these straight segments of track could be used to extend a potential LSM launch. So if the launch track does need to be extended, then it needs to be extended backwards toward the load station. If the LSM launch were to begin right outside the station building, say from about right here once the 3-car train has fully departed the building, that leaves approximately 575 feet or 175 meters of available launch room between this location and the start of the existing straight track following the launch. Now, if this is the case, there would be an odd incline change from the flat slope of the old transfer track to the slight upward incline of the old launch track. Technically speaking, I don't think this would be an issue for an LSM launch if the beginning is flat and then the majority of the launch is slightly uphill, as roller coasters nowadays feature LSMs on literal airtime hills. But the transition into the upward slope track would certainly have to be spread out more to account for higher speeds, and it would certainly be a weird quirk with the launch. Overall, extending the launch would be helpful, as an LSM launch could need more space to reach the speed needed compared to the more powerful hydraulic launch. In Top Thrill Dragster's original configuration, it launched to an advertised speed of 0 to 120 miles per hour or 193 kilometers per hour in 3.8 seconds. Feel free to pause the video at any point to analyze my napkin math further, but it means Top Thrill Dragster achieved an average launch acceleration rate of 14.15 meters per second squared or 1.44 Gs. Plugging in the launch acceleration into a distance formula, it means it took 335 feet or 102 meters to achieve that top speed. Then for the new PNE Playland launch coaster, Zamperla is advertising a launch acceleration of 1.3 Gs during the coaster's 0 to 45 mile per hour or 72 kilometer per hour launch. Now, I have a feeling that 1.3 Gs is the peak acceleration rate and not the average rate of acceleration, and the new Top Thrill Dragster may hit that same peak acceleration at the start of its launch, but I doubt that it will be sustained all the way through as the train gains more and more speed. Let's take a look at Red Force at Ferrari Land, which is an Intamin LSM launching roller coaster that accelerates trains from nearly 0 to 180 kilometers per hour or almost 112 miles per hour in 5 seconds. Intamin states on their website that the ride has a 140 meter long launch, which is just over 459 feet. Now, PortAventura states the launch exerts 1.35 Gs of acceleration, and I believe that's the same scenario with the PNE Playland coaster, where that is just the peak rate of acceleration, probably right at the start of the launch, and the average acceleration rate across the entire launch is probably lower. Doing some more math, accelerating from 0 to 180 kilometers per hour in 5 seconds yields an average acceleration rate of 10 meters per second squared or just over 1 G. But Red Force doesn't actually launch from a dead stop, as trains are already rolling at what I'd guess is 5 miles per hour or 8 kilometers per hour, which means an overall change in velocity of 172 kilometers per hour, which yields a lower acceleration rate of 9.56 meters per second squared, or just below 1 G at 0.97 Gs. Using a distance formula, I'd estimate it takes about 131 meters, or just about 430 feet of the available 140 meter or 459 foot long launch track for trains to reach top speed on Red Force. If the revamped Dragster also launched starting at a similar speed that Red Force does and featured the same estimated acceleration rate, that would mean a minimum acceleration time of 5.38 seconds to reach 120 miles per hour and a minimum launch distance of just over 150 meters or nearly 493 feet. Or if the revamped Dragster were to launch from a dead stop, which is possible with LSM launches, but still feature the same acceleration rate as Red Force, that would require a minimum acceleration time of 5.62 seconds and a slightly longer minimum launch distance of 151 meters or 495 feet. And what's crazy is that in the original form, there was 515 feet or 157 meters of track between where the first car of a train was at each launch to the end of the launch track, which is greater than the number I just calculated, which could suggest the LSM launch could fit within the original launch space. But I believe there needs to be more launch track for additional buffer room. Like I mentioned earlier about Red Force's 140 meter launch track, Intamin states that is horizontal launch track, and a good chunk at the end of the launch track actually begins to slope upward into the top top hat. According to Google Earth, Red Force's launch track is actually about 155 meters or 515 feet long when you include the curved portion at the end. Based on my napkin math, that's roughly an additional 80 feet or 24 meters more than what a train needs to accelerate to speed based on the ride's advertised launch speed and acceleration time. So that same buffer might need to be applied to Dragster's LSM launch, and 495 feet plus 80 feet yields the exact 575 feet of potential launch space I have theorized about, which is why I believe the launch will start directly after the station. As far as why the buffer is necessary, it may be due to empty trains that actually require more speed to climb over the tower. This is because empty trains carry less momentum and run slower. It's the same principle as roller coasters with lift hills, where trains loaded with riders will run faster than empty trains. With its hydraulic launch, Top Thrill Dragster had an empty train enabled launch function that actually launched trains slightly faster than your average launch to help empty trains clear the top hat. And the buffer room may allow for that boost function to occur for empty trains. So hopefully Zamperla is able to match the average acceleration rate of Red Force at just under 1G or even exceed that. It's been nearly 6 years since Red Force opened in April of 2017, and I'd imagine that LSM technology has only improved since then. As far as who will provide the LSM launch, my guess is that it will be the company Intrasys, who also provide LSM launches for most of the coaster manufacturers in the industry, such as Vekoma, Mach, Gerstlauer, Premier, and even B&M. Whereas Intamin used the company InDriveTech, as I believe InDriveTech is some sort of sub-brand of Intamin. Going back to the ride's operations, I'm fearful there could be a sizable drop in rider capacity with the revamped Top Thrill Dragster. Loading two 12-passenger trains at a time means only 24 passengers per dispatch, compared to the past with two 18-passenger trains, which was 36 riders per dispatch. In its original setup, Dragster was capable of launching a train every 60 seconds, which led to a theoretical 60 dispatches an hour and 1,080 riders per hour. If this same interval remains for the new Dragster, it will mean a new maximum of 720 riders per hour, which is a major hit. But I'm confident the ride would be modified to allow for less time between each launch, and to help the ride run better with just 4 trains. So let me show you how I believe this could work, and keep in mind that this portion of the video is purely my own speculation. But to start, hopefully the final brake run and following block zones at the end of the ride are reconfigured in a way to reduce the time between each launch, as that was the main holdup with the original Dragster. A change to the ending brake run and following blocks would reduce the amount of time that trains are slowly rolling forward back to the station after slowing to a controlled speed in the brake run. For those who are unfamiliar, a block zone is a section of ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone is a method to stop a train in case the block zone ahead is still occupied. This is the safety system that prevents roller coaster trains from colliding with one another. In the past, Top Thrill Dragster featured 9 block zones. First was the transfer track, then launch, then brake, followed by hold 2 and hold 1, then unload 2 and unload 1, and then load 2 and load 1. Now this was how the ride was intended to operate, but due to a design issue with the brake run, when the ride is switched into automatic mode, which is the mode that any guest rides the coaster in, the brake and hold 2 blocks combine into one block, reducing the total number of block zones to 8. I had the opportunity to operate Top Thrill Dragster as a ride attendant. To put it simply, without including the madness of the separate unload station with 5 train operations, the ride would dispatch 2 trains from the load 2 and load 1 blocks into the launch and transfer blocks. If the hold 2 block ahead was clear, the first train would be launched by an operator, and once that train started heading down the 400-foot drop and exited the launch block, the second train would advance from the transfer block into the launch block, where it would wait to be launched. The launch system would then reset in about 45 seconds, but the train ahead would still need to clear the hold 2 block. Once hold 2 is clear, the second train would launch, and this could occur as little as 60 seconds after the train ahead had launched. Then once the second train cleared the launch block and started descending the drop down the top hat, the next pair of trains could be dispatched from load 1 and load 2. But if the rumor of 4 train operations is true, this same system won't hold up. If the next pair of trains dispatched right away once the launch block cleared, the train still rounding the track would return to the station much later than the first train ahead of it, and thus have much less time to unload and load new riders if the crew wanted to hit the dispatch interval. And overall, the second train arriving to the station station late every cycle would be a hinder on the ride's overall dispatch times. Here are the 8 block zones of the original dragster when in automatic mode. With less trains on the track, it would improve capacity by eliminating block zones so that less time is wasted by trains advancing through controlled block zones, like the original Hold 2 and Hold 1 blocks. With less trains on the track, the faster a pair of trains can both return back to the load station will help increase capacity substantially, and it will also be highly important to reduce the amount of time between each launch. So I believe the blocks of the new dragster might be something like this, where the launch block is actually combined with the brake block and the Hold 1 and Hold 2 positions are eliminated. Then notice that the new block that I'll just call launch ends where the original Hold 1 block ended. Ideally, the train would slow to a controlled speed later in this block zone, instead of slowing to a controlled speed before the original Hold 2 block. So slowing of each train would technically begin later on the brake run, and I think a design like Red Force's brake run would actually make a lot of sense and help trains clear the block faster. But with trains slowing to a controlled speed just before the end of the original Hold 1 block, it means each train only has to slowly roll through the original Unload 2 and Unload blocks to return to the load station. In my head, the ride will operate like Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens Tampa Bay, which is an Intamin LSM launching roller coaster that can unload and load 2 trains at once in its main load station. Let me explain. On its first launch, Cheetah Hunt does not launch trains from a standstill, and trains start each launch with speed. A lot of LSM launching roller coasters operate this way, and the new dragster could be the same. But whenever a pair of trains at Cheetah Hunt is dispatched, the first train advances through a pre-launch block and then begins the first launch afterwards without stopping, and the second train stops in the pre-launch block. Because the first train must launch right away, Cheetah Hunt is unable to dispatch a pair of trains until the train ahead has cleared this block zone midway through the ride. So I believe the new dragster may be the same, where 2 trains are dispatched from the load station, and the first train will head through what I believe will be the transfer block at the front of the existing load station, and then directly into the launch block and take off down the launch track without stopping. The second train will then park in the transfer block and remain in this block until the train ahead not only crests the top hat, but also exits the main brake run and enters the waiting 2 block. Then the second train will advance forward into the launch block and take off down the launch track and head up and over the top hat. Then just like Cheetah Hunt, the next pair of trains will not be able to dispatch until the second train from the last pair exits the launch block and is in the waiting 2 block. Once this occurs, the next pair of trains can be dispatched, and both trains from the prior cycle will be present to enter the load station to begin unloading and loading of new riders while the 2 other trains complete their cycle. So the ride will essentially have to stack all trains before dispatching the next pair, but it means that 2 trains will always be ready to enter the station when the next pair of trains are dispatched. This is important because both trains entering the station will need ample time to unload and load new riders. And since the first train dispatched in a pair will launch immediately, maybe 10 seconds after being dispatched, and the second train will hopefully launch no more than 40 seconds later if it takes 40 seconds from when a train launches to when it fully exits the launch block and is in the waiting 2 block. Then once the second train in the cycle exits the launch block, the next pair of trains could dispatch. So the time between dispatches would be determined by the 10 seconds before the first train launches, plus 40 seconds between the first and second launch, plus 40 seconds for the second train to exit the launch block, for a total of 90 seconds. So 2 trains could then be dispatched every 90 seconds, which means 40 dispatches an hour. And with the ride's 12 passenger trains means a theoretical 960 riders per hour, just 120 riders shy of Dragster's former 1080 riders per hour. Now this is certainly a sizable drop in theoretical throughput, and the ride would more likely average a more realistic 800 riders per hour in the scenario, as it's usually pretty hard to operate any roller coaster at its theoretical capacity. But if the LSM dragster runs more reliably than the hydraulic launch dragster, this drop in hourly capacity may still result in more riders getting to ride the revamped dragster overall. And of course, all of that speculation about how the ride could operate with just 4 trains is purely my own, but most everything else from earlier in the video comes from an outside source. As I was wrapping up this video, I received another update that the concrete load station platforms were being entirely demolished, and the station roof structure may also be on its way out. This could signify an even larger change to the ride is coming than what I just theorized in this video, and as I hear more, I'll give you all another update. I'm also hearing that the ride's original 6 trains are still on site at the park, and are confirmed to have never shipped to Knott's Berry Farm, which was a rumor started last year in 2022. Additionally, patches of test paint have been spotted spotted on some of the ride's remaining supports on its launch track. There's a few different shades of dark gray painted on a support, so it's likely Dragster may receive an all-new color scheme where the supports are painted a dark gray. With the station building potentially being demolished and a new color scheme, this could suggest the ride will receive an all-new theme. And I hear that the entire midway from Corkscrew to Magnum may receive a retheme as well to correspond with the ride, which I've heard could be a space theme. So that will do it for this update video on Top Thrill Dragster. The main takeaways are that the ride is being reimagined by Zamperla and will run Zamperla's new lightning trains. Just like the new launching roller coaster at PNE Playland, the ride may now only run 4 trains that are 12 passengers each and also ditch the unload station. And then we'll all have to wait until 2024 to ride the new Dragster. If I hear anything more, I'll be sure to update you all, and I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Feel free to like the video if so, and thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this and comment down below what you think is happening. Alright, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.